So before we get started, just want to make sure that everyone can hear my audio this morning. For the Facebook family out there, can everyone hear me just fine? Looks like that's a yes. We'll get started here in about 1 minute. So get your coffee, get your water, whatever you need this morning, and we'll get started. All right, guys, we'll get started. Good morning, everyone from across the world. This is my first Facebook Live, and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about the genetic sire summary update and some of the great bulls that we have in the GENEX breeding program that'll be available post this April sire summary. So I'll give a little background of myself for people that haven't met me or know me. So my name is Jon Schefers. So I lead the peak female team. So that team is responsible for the matings that are done within the peak program, as long as creating healthy live bull calves that the GENEX brand can sell. So a little bit background on myself. I grew up on a small dairy farm in Minnesota. I've been in the industry for roughly 11 years, started as a sire analyst. And then approximately 8 years ago, we started the peak program. So we felt that we needed to have control and control our destiny as far as genetics. And here we are today. With the formation of Urus, what happened at that point in time is the peak and co-op breeding programs combined at that point in time. So when we talk about where our product comes from at GENEX, we'll talk about that product coming from peak here in and here out. So just a little bit about myself and what I do for peak, and we're really excited to see some of the peak bulls in the GENEX lineup, both Holstein and Jersey, and look forward to more high bulls to come. So just kind of go over what we're going to talk about today. So this sire summary had a lot of change. I had been looking at bull proofs ever since I could open a red book. And I tell you what, this was a proof round for the ages. So we had a lot of change, and we're going to talk about that change and hopefully put your mind at ease a little bit about some of the changes and talk about, some of the new thresholds that we were used to and how it's going to affect our decision making. So we'll talk a little bit about the base change. We'll talk about some of the changes to TPI, JPI for the Jersey people out there, and then also highlight some of our new bulls that will be available. So let's get started. Let's talk about the base change. So every 5 years, we have a base change. Basically, the proofs are adjusted to the average of the cows born at a set point in time. So our current genetic evaluations are based on cows born in 2015. Now, when we look at the base change, it was a record base change. We have never seen such genetic improvement in a 5-year period like we saw with this base change. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the adjustments to the PTAs and the proofs, but definitely a record year. We're seeing a lot of the daughters on the Holstein and the Jersey side be from the genomic selection that we had day to day. Now, keep in mind with a base change that a base change is only an average change. So individual bulls will be affected differently, and there's going to be a distribution around that mean. So not every bull is going to be affected as much by the base change, but keep in mind that's going to be an average change to the PTAs on the proofs. So what were the changes? First, we'll start with Holstein. So when we look at the base change, we can look at about 500 pounds of milk adjustment downwards. So lots of improvement for milk production, about 25 fat, 20 protein, and then also about 2 points on productive life. So some pretty big changes, and you're going to see some different values on the proof sheet when you look at it. When we look at traits like sire calving ease or somatic cell score, keep in mind that for calving ease, it's a base of 8. So 8 is considered average. And for somatic cell score, a base average is considered 3 points. So on calving ease, we've actually improved calving ease over the last 5 years. So bulls that were 7.6 back in December will now be 8% on calving ease due to that 0.4 increase. Now keep in mind that 8%, that average, that's actually not the incidence rate or difficulty births and heifers. So we have to keep that in mind in our selection decisions. I had taken a look at some of the progress we made in calving ease. What we've actually seen in the Holstein population is a 1% decrease in sire calving ease every 10 years since 2000. So over the last 20 years, we have reduced calving difficult births by 2%. So just keep that in mind when you're making your selection decisions and you're looking at bulls, that an 8% bull today is not the same as an 8% bull 5, 10, maybe even 20 years ago. If we look at the Jersey, a lot of similar changes. Jersey's had big improvements on production, about 570 milk, 30 fat, 20 protein, about 1.5 on productive life, so very similar to the Holstein. One thing we didn't do so well in the Jersey population is fertility. Actually, the Jersey cow got less fertile over that 5-year period. And we're going to talk about how the Jersey Cattle Association is going to work to improve that moving forward. So actually, a bull that was -1 back in December will actually be 0 on DPR given those changes. So those are some of the big production and health changes. If we look at on the Holstein side, type and udder composite, one thing to keep in mind is, when we look at our reference population for the type traits, historically, it's only been classified cows. So the only cows that went toward that base change were the ones that Holstein USA would classified. This year, there were some changes made. So actually, the reference population used to adjust the type traits would be a blend of the classified cows and actually cows that were genomically tested that had at least some production information in their proofs. So it gives a realistic snapshot of, the U.S. cow population instead of just the classified ones. So just keep that in mind. We've updated how we look at the reference population. So when we look at the type traits, we're going to see about a 0.75 decrease in type, about 0.5 for udder composite. There's going to be a lot of bulls that are between 0 and 1 industry-wide. So it's going to take us all a little getting used to some of the new values. So don't be alarmed if bulls are below a point on type or udders. That doesn't mean they're a bad bull. It just means that we're working with a different base. Furthermore, negative is not bad. If we have a bull at -0.1 udder composite, keep in mind that that's a breed average. And I would challenge anyone that breeds Holstein cows. If you look at cows born 5 years ago, how many were we actually culling based on bad udders? Very few. The udder improvement we've had over the last 10, 20, 30 years has been tremendous. And then also keep in mind with PTA type, we're going to have bulls that are negative on type. But a lot of times what you get with type is you get stature. So think about when you're selecting your bulls, do you really want bigger cows? If not, then hey, let's not include type in our selection. If we look at some of the new thresholds, some of you may look at net merit on the Holstein, cheese merit on the Jersey side. We had a change of about 235 net merit points. So let's say our target before was we really want those 1,000 net merit bulls. I'd say today that benchmark is roughly about 750. If we look at the Jersey side for cheese merit, we saw a adjustment of 215 points. So maybe our bulls that were 600 cheese merit before are going to be closer in that 375 range. So just kind of keep that in mind, that there were some pretty massive changes. And, at the end of the day, even though the values have changed, it's all about the rank of the bulls. So when we're selecting, don't get caught up on the numbers, but look at the relative rank when you're making your selection decisions. So that's a little bit about the base change. I think if there's any other questions, feel free to type in those questions as we go. We can address those toward the end. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the formula changes. So there were 2 formula changes, one for TPI and Holstein, one for JPI and Jersey. So we'll start with TPI. So overall, I would say the TPI formula changes were pretty minor. When we look at probably the biggest change was more of a 1-to-1 ratio for fat versus protein selection. I guess what we're seeing in the United States right now, as far as how people are getting paid for their milk, is that there's been more dollars coming in that paycheck for high fats at this point in time. So we've got about a 1-to-1 ratio in that TPI formula. TPI also included the CDCB health traits. So any of the metabolic disorders like retained placenta, ketosis, etc. They changed their foot and leg composite to include rear leg side view. So what we've seen in the Holstein breed, due to some popular bloodlines, is the legs get really posty. So this is an attempt to get those legs at a more optimum side view. And then finally, they shifted a 1% emphasis from dairy form to health traits. So pretty minor. Basically, there was a negative weighting on dairy form in the previous formula. So actually selecting for cows that carry condition. So what they've done is they've just transferred that to health. If we look at some of the TPI values, those did change. So if you're looking at bulls and wondering, well, why did bulls go up, or why does it appear that way? We did note about a 40-point increase on average for TPI. So bulls that were maybe 2,800 TPI before are probably about 2,840. And that really has to come down to how the formula is generated. So every 5 years, Holstein updates a constant and a multiplier that's used in that formula. So don't be alarmed by that. Like I said before, it really comes down to how these bulls rank. So, hey, we all love to see our females that we genomic tested to be a little bit higher, but just keep that in mind. So that's a little bit about Holstein. If we look at the Jersey side, I'd say a lot of changes in that. So I guess the first one to talk about is shifting the weighting or the fat to protein ratio. So we saw more increase on fat pounds in the JPI formula. So if you look at combined fat and protein, about 60% of that is on protein and about 40% of that is on fat. Previously, it was about 2/3 protein, 1/3 fat. So not equal, but definitely closer to equal. There was a shift toward fertility. So we talked a little bit about the base change and how the Jersey breed had actually gone backwards as far as fertility. So they shifted more emphasis on daughter pregnancy rate, cow conception rate, heifer conception rate. But that did come at a cost. You can't add anything to the formula without taking something out. So they did reduce the emphasis on Jersey udder index. And if you break that down and you actually look at the changes, what you'll see is that, mainly that came at udder depths. So previously there was about 4.5% emphasis just on udder depth, and they reduced that by a couple percent. So I guess, our philosophy is that cows do need to have a little capacity to their udder in order to milk. And at the end of the day, we all get paid on milk. Also on the JPI, they included the CDCP health traits, pretty big emphasis, around 5%. And they're also making an emphasis to make the Jersey cow smaller or to maintain the growth of the size of the Jersey cow. So you'll note that they're putting even more emphasis on maintaining that and making sure that the Jersey cow doesn't go any bigger. So if we look at JPI, we look at December compared to April, I'd say there's about a 60 to 65 decrease in JPI. On Jersey Udder Index, that's going to be about 12. So you're going to notice some JUIs on bulls that make you scratch your head. There's going to be some negatives. There's going to be some between 0 and 10. Just keep in mind that's a pretty massive change, and that maybe if our selection was 10 JUI before, it should realistically be 0 or better. So keep that in mind. So those are some changes with TPI and JPI. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the highlights on the GENEX front. This was a big week for us. We had a lot of bulls that we released. There was actually 29 new releases on the Holstein side. We actually have 3 bulls that are 3 new top ICC bulls, so Ideal Commercial Cow Index. Leading that group is a bull by the name of Flex Time. His code number is 1H14255. He's the top ICC option at this point. He's a frazzled son, and he's a really good one to boot. He comes from the well-known Planet Tasket cow. If you look at a lot of the bulls through that GENEX has offered their clients through the years, there's been a lot of successful bulls that have come from that family. You know, he's a bull with high components. He's got a lot of health. He's going to keep the size in check on that, so you can use that bull with confidence that he's not going to make, really huge animals, maybe giraffes. But, he's got great udders to go with that. So not only are they moderate size, but they're going to have outstanding rear udders to go with that. So we're pretty excited about Flex Time. Another bull that I keep note on is 1H15055 Peak Fortnite. So a bull I'm really excited about. The whole Peak team is, GENEX is. This is the new high edition brought to GENEX by Peak. He's an early positive son, and he actually comes from the Delicious family that has done an excellent job making high bulls for the breed. So he's an outlier. I mean, he's an outlier on ICC. For those of you maybe looking at net merit or TPI, he's 835 net merit. So keep in mind, we had about a 250 point decrease. So on the old base, he'd be close to 1100 net merit. He's 2973 TPI. He's one of the top bulls in the breed for that. And he's actually a sire of sons for Peak. So we are using him to create the next generation of great bulls. And we're excited to genomically test his sons, and hopefully he can pass the torch. When you look at the bull and how he's bred, he's going to be volume and components. So you look at his sire stack, he's a positive son, which is sire by Duke, and there's frazzled. So there's a lot of production. There's a lot of components, and he's got a lot of health as well. So one bull that we're really excited about. Couple more Holstein highlights. 1H14107 Millennial. So Millennial's been on the marketing list for quite some time. He's sired by Juicy. I'm not going to lie to you. I had to look up that bull probably about 12 months ago. I didn't know who Juicy was. He's a bull bred by Windstar out in Idaho. Really cool bull when you look at him. So what's cool about Millennial is he's actually created 2 top 25 sons in the world that have been bred through the Peak program. So the proof is in the pudding right there, and he's already have some sons that are going to be breed leaders and future sire sons themselves. I'm really excited about this bull for our clients. He's a bit of a unicorn if you look at him. Some of the comments I hear from people are, cows are getting too big. legs are getting too posty, teeth are getting too short. Well, this bull, he's minus on stature, he adds set to the leg, and he adds teat length. Those are very rare bulls to find. You will not find them anywhere. And to boot, he is over 2 points on udder composites. So really exciting bull. The 2-point udder composites, even more impressive, even considering the base change. Keep in mind that, most of the bulls, the average bull got knocked back 0.85 udder composites. So he's definitely going to be an udder improver. Another bull to keep in mind, you look at the top proven bull right now, 1H12786 pile driver. You talk about an outlier, that bull has production. So he's over 3,100 pounds of milk. He's really ahead of his time. I could not find any genomic bulls that were actually higher than him for milk production. And what's even more impressive is that if you look at his milk production, he's still positive on udder depths. So you have loads of milk production with shallow udders or non-deep udders. So very impressive. Now, hey, that milk production will come with a cost. He's a bull that you do want to protect for the fertility traits. That's not his strong suit, but he's definitely an outlier. And if you love milk production, you will love pile driver. I guess the final thing on the Holstein side, we've made a really strong effort to be one of the leaders in polled genetics. We do have 3 new polled bulls to offer our clients, and we're excited to continue that. We're putting a lot of emphasis on polled within our peak program. We have some high donors and high mating sires, so we want to continue that for the GENEX brand. So that's a little bit about the Holsteins. Please, if you have individual questions about other bulls, please type those in as we go. Jersey side. So we had 13 new bulls on the Jersey side. If you look at these bulls and how they rank on ICC, 6 of our top 10 bulls for ICC are new releases, which is always cool. You always want to have every proof round you have new bulls to release. So this is highlighted by 4 Zinc sons. So Zinc is a familiar name for the GENEX clients. So a couple of the bulls in that group would be Fuller and Woj. And then we have 2 new peak bulls, Showtime and Real Cost, that have been added to the Jersey lineup. So as a whole, when we look at those bulls, they're all big-time udder improvers. There's actually no negative JUIs in that entire group. So you can use them with confidence that the udders are going to be good. Now, when we look at the top bull on that list, Fuller, some of the key highlights on him. Now, he's a Zinc son. He's near 5 on JUI. So keep in mind that we had about a 12-point adjustment. So he would have been near 20 JUI back in December. He's almost a point on DPR, and he's a big-time component improver. So very excited about that bull. Ranks well in other indexes. Will be a mating sire for peak. So that's a quick update on Jersey. We also did release some crossbred sires. So we have 7 new crossbreds. Now these are 50-50 Jersey Holstein bulls. We have clients in the United States that are really demanding those bulls. And in general, when we look at these are going to give us more volume than our pure Jersey bulls. So, definitely pretty excited about, those crossbred bulls for our clients. So, that's kind of a quick update, with the base change, with some of the formula change, some of the proof highlights. So I think at this time, I'm going to open it up to any questions that we might have in Facebook land. All right, so I'm just scrolling through the questions right now. I'm going to go down the order. So good morning, Casey Dick. So you said so your question was, with those changes to calving ease, what is the recommended calving ease for heifers? It's a great question. I guess when I look at calving ease, keep in mind that, if we were setting a benchmark of 7 in the past, that maybe our benchmark should be 7.5. One thing that we're working on with peak and we don't have information about is, what is the actual incident rate today on cabbies? I don't have the answer. We're hoping to get you that answer. But I think just keep in mind, if you were using a threshold before, and let's say it's 7, then we should probably increase that to 7.5, from my standpoint. So great question, Casey. Something we're working on. Some of the cavities values do look a little nasty when we look at them. So appreciate that question. All right. Kim Egan, did ICC also change in threshold values? Yes, it did. So we have a whole new set of ICC values that we need to be looking at. As we mentioned before, it's really going to come down to, how these bulls rank, and for our clients that, love ICC and want to continue to use it, let's make sure that we rank those bulls accordingly and not get caught up on the value that's posted. So great question. All right, Scott Carson, how soon will you have Fortnite sons on the ground? I should know this answer because our team that leads the meetings should know this. I'm gonna wild guess here. I'd say, Scott, that we've been using that bull for roughly 4 nights or 4 months now. So I'd say probably in about 5 months we're going to see some of the first Fortnite sons. The reason why he wasn't released sooner is obviously we need to build inventory for our clients. So I'd expect about 5 months time those Fortnites are going to start hitting the ground, and we're pretty excited about that. All right, we got another question. So we talked a little bit, we got a question all the way from Africa. I don't know what time it is there right now. It's probably mid-afternoon, evening. How can we get these bulls to Botswana, Africa? I'm going to have to defer that question. I will make sure that we find the right people on our team to get those bulls your direction. We have to keep in mind if there's any export qualifications for those bulls to go to Africa. So appreciate the interest and look forward to breeding better cows for you. Got a question from Jason James. Are there any pile driver sons coming? So we do have one high pile driver son that was used as a mating sire within peak. So we have one of his high sons that was used. He was a bull that really surprised us, and we have to keep in mind that even though we have genomics as a tool, we do miss bulls, and there's bulls that surprise us. And pile driver was a bull that surprised us, and it's great for our clients because they do milk, but we did miss an opportunity there, and that's okay. But we do have one of his high sons, Crane. I was searching for the name really bad, but Crane, we do have some Crane sons in the pipeline. We don't plan to use pile driver as a mating sire because when we look at our selection, we look at pounds of fat and protein. And with him, we find that there's actually genomic bulls that maybe they're not higher on milk, but they have a higher combined fat and protein. So we got another question, Leah. How much is Peak looking at the CDCP health traits? So it's in our selection criteria. So obviously for an index like net merit, it's in there. But we're not trying to drive improvements for any one of those individual traits. We have to keep in mind that when we look at genetic correlations for productive life and livability, that the genetic correlations between those traits and the CDCB health traits are pretty high. So we're going to focus on those big things. We have the health traits on our radar, but it's not going to be a primary selection of focus. We're going to focus on, high ICC bulls, bulls that are high production, high component, high health, with, the type that our clients want. So I'll take a few more questions here and then I'll go. So Abby had asked, will Peak continue to put some focus on polled genetics? Absolutely. So we're excited about the polled genetics that we have in our pipeline. There is a bull that we have used within Peak called Zazzle. Zazzle is one of the top bulls in the world. We use him on some of our high net merit poll donors. So we want to be a leader in polled. So we're going to continue to do that. So that's a focus for us to continue that because we do see the demand not only domestically, but internationally. Matt talked about, what about A2A2? What can we expect? So we do have a lot of A2A2 bulls. I do not have the list in front of me, but generally when we genotype our bulls within Peak, I'd say roughly 60% of those are A2A2. So we definitely have a lot of offerings there. I believe Fortnite, who I highlighted, is A2A2. But, we continue to look at that. One thing that we do within Peak is that if we have two bulls and let's say they're both 800 ICC, but one is A2A2 and the other one is A1A1, we're going to pick that A2A2 bull because we know that our clients want it. So other than that, I'm going to wrap it up. I hope you guys learn a little bit today on the proof changes. This is always a favorite time of year for me. I do hope that everyone is feeling healthy, being safe through the pandemic across the world. I know it's a difficult time for dairy farming right now with prices and everything. So we do appreciate our clients' business even through these tough times. And, we're dedicated to, provide higher genetics for you each day forward. So I just want everyone to stay healthy, stay safe through this. As you can see, I'm in my basement right now since none of us are going into the office due to this. So definitely want to appreciate all the clients' business, even through these tough times. So that's all I have this morning. I appreciate it. I look forward to more Facebook Live feeds. And if you have any questions, just reach out to us. Thanks again.